Hi. Good evening, everyone. And this is Dr. Anuradha Sridhar from the Aditya Birla Education Academy, welcoming you for today's session. We all know that the emotional well-being of a person is just as important as their physical health. Good mental health allows children and young people to develop resilience and to cope up with whatever life throws at them and grow into well-rounded, healthy adults. It's often a misconception that childhood is a carefree, trouble-free period in our lives. And in these unprecedented times, which are beyond our control, where children cannot meet anyone, they cannot go down to play, they have faced this pandemic with much as resilience as the adults. How do we ensure the well-being of our children, especially in the online classes that we have? So today we have a very noted personality, Dr. Zirak Marker. He is a senior psychiatrist and advisor of Mpower, the center at Mumbai. Dr. Marker is a renowned child and adult psychiatrist and a psychotherapist with clinical training. He has over 18 years of experience in educational psychology and is currently the medical director of the Aditya Birla Integrated School for Children with Learning Disabilities and Psychological Emotional Problems. I hand over today's session to Dr. Marker without much ado and ask him to take him through today's session. Thank you, Dr. Marker, for accepting our invitation to be with us today.
Thank you for that, and welcome to today's session. Uh, I would like to start first with a brief little case. Yes, we are living in complete uncertainty at this point. Yes, we are all in a pandemic and a lockdown situation. I think with mental health itself becoming like a crisis. And that's not just me saying that, or it's not just in our city or country, but I think it's a worldwide phenomena and aspect that's leading up to these proportions. Children, to be honest, I mean, it's such a common question. Everyone's asked, how are the kids doing at a time like this? How are the children coping? And the beauty of it all, and the answer to that is they're coping differently with different age groups. So I think the real champions in all of this are the younger kids who are, I guess, under the ages of 6 and 7. I think they feel this is like an extended holiday for them. They're loving sitting at home and being fed by their parents and having us as parents, I think, with them 24/7. We get actual quality time with them, at least I do as a father. And whether it's tucking away one afternoon, watching a movie with them, or just, the joys of having a leisurely breakfast with them, small things, right, in life that go a long way. And I think all of us as parents also have been very cognizant into, being mindful and ensuring that every day is made fun, is made different, and is made as creative as possible for our little ones. I think the age group that is going through difficulties are the teenagers, and I think the young adults, especially teenagers who are perhaps done with their school life. And perhaps I know so many kids who paid all their school fees for universities to go abroad, and they're just stuck at crossroads. They don't know whether to go back. Even some of the universities that have allowed students to get back, obviously us as parents are not comfortable from sheer health reasons. And of course, so many courses are allowing universities to start with online work, but there's that big question mark, right? I mean, when you need education to sometimes be experiential, like say medical school, for example, or design school that needs hands-on lab work and experimentation, it's a big question mark out there with regards to those future aspects for those kids. With teenagers, yes, the problems being locked down any which ways, I think in higher grades, the online presence for our education is much more. I mean, I know students are sometimes online for about a good 4 or 5 hours from the educational perspective. And then teenagers being teenagers, their respite or getaway is again being online. So whether it's online gaming, so gaming addiction has become huge, social media browsing, or just endlessly watching YouTube, or then there are Zoom calls and party chats. And I can go on with that list of the amount of screen time that teenagers are spending. With that, I think sleep cycles have completely gone for a toss. I mean, at least 1 out of 2 or 3 teenagers who I'm counseling are literally up all night and are sleeping through the entire day. I think there's not 1 or 2 teenagers who I know who are not doing this. Part of it is also peer pressure, because I think everyone's doing it, so they feel the need to conform with that. And some of the teenagers actually joke back with me saying that they're staying up all night and sleeping all day to escape their moms, because they want peace of mind. They don't want to partake in household chores, and or they feel their moms are nagging them all the time. So this is their way of escaping, right? So there are lots and lots of combinations and permutations, but briefly, I think from a mental health perspective, obviously, when you've not had normalized, rested sleep, you are not going to be able to function the next day, right? So there's more irritability, there are more mood swings, there is decline in attention, focus, concentration, and memory. Overall cognition and cognitive abilities seem to get affected when there is a lack of sleep or sleep disturbances with altered sleep cycles like this. Obviously, nutrition and food and normalized balanced meal times get affected, because teenagers, being teenagers anyways, are junk food eaters, or they have different patterns of eating. So either there's severe weight gain, there are increased incidences of endocrinological problems or diabetes. I mean, endless issues health wise also, and even basic things like hygiene, right? I mean, I have young adults and teenagers who've not had a bath in 4 or 5 days at a stretch. So yes, this lockdown, in each other's faces all the time, confinement, no outlets, has built up a lot of frustration, irritability. And if there are underlying existing mental health concerns, this lockdown has definitely percolated it up. But I know that this phase is temporary. I think for all of us, we are living in very, very uncertain times. And with uncertainty comes anxiety. But what we really need to, uh, be cognizant of is we've all adapted, and adaptability is the key to success. It's the key to healthily deal with this problem, and definitely with children and young adults and teenagers, to help build resilience. And that's what we've all done in a way, right? We've all, I think, accepted this situation for what it is. We've accepted the fact that we have to stay home, not just for our own well-being, but to safeguard our parents or our elders and our loved ones' well-being as well from contracting the COVID-19 virus. And at the same time, we've adapted. Our school kids have adapted to online education. I mean, it's amazing, right? They have online yoga, they have online dance, online drama, online. And as you know, we run a small little school that kind of integrates students with learning disabilities, and there we've even incorporated occupation therapy, sensory integration therapy, speech and language therapy, and the whole mental health curriculum and the counseling, everything online, right? So uh, my son has his piano class online. I mean, something that I have never heard of and thought it would never be possible, but that's possible too. So yes, adaptability has brought forth a lot of resilience and acceptance. And I think that also helps with healthier mindsets. But keeping aside the lockdown and the pandemic, I think everyone's heard to death about how to cope with the pandemic. I'm going to talk about mental health in itself, and why and how it's affecting our next generation and children, and why it is so, so important to keep our classrooms emotionally safe. So like I started off saying, I'm going to briefly talk about, and just before the lockdown, actually, uh, somewhere in January, February, there was an 8th standard girl who had entered her class after the lunch break. It was a history class. The teacher was about to prepare the class and give instructions. It was a project that they were doing. They were made to go into groups, and the teacher was again giving instructions. And typically there was chatter in the class. There was a bit of giggling and joking around. And this one girl who's apparently been very sorted in school, her grades have been fantastic. always had a good set of friends in class and all of that. An actual balanced kid as per what the school gave as feedback about. Uh, she went to the teacher and asked to be excused to use the bathroom. So she went to the bathroom and that was it. She left the class. But after the class had settled and the groups were made for the project, the teacher realized that the kid had not come back to class. And this was almost 15 minutes down from the time that she left to use the bathroom. Uh, so she asked the monitor of the class, another student, to go down and check in the girl's bathroom to see whether she was okay and to get her back up. So the monitor left and went down, and again in 2 minutes time she came running back up, completely distraught, because the child who had gone down in the bathroom had actually cut her wrist and was bleeding out into the bathroom in school, right? Now, can you imagine uh, the distress and the trauma that this child who witnessed this, the teacher who excused herself from class and ran down, she said it was the most horrific thing to see, because even though it was one deep cut, she said the entire cubicle in the bathroom floor was full of blood and the child's uniform was full in blood. This girl was about to pass out. There was absolute panic amongst the other kids in the class. And this is not uncommon. What I'm trying to get at is as how drastic as this sounds, this is not the first case that we've heard about. And this is in fact increasingly becoming more common in schools itself. Now, obviously, when we got into the case, it was over some a minor little altercation that she had. She liked some boy in the class in a higher grade, actually. Other kids got to know about it. Then there was a few weeks or months of dating happening. And then there was a small, typical teenage kind of a breakup. And there were politics with this. And there were other kids who started teasing her and posted something on social media the previous day. And this escalated into a lot of drama after that. And it basically led to this. But that's not the interesting part about this case is that this child has been emotionally disturbed for months and months before that. And the scarier part is because she was emotionally disturbed, because she did not know who to turn to and who to reach out to for help, not even her parents, because apparently she's got extremely, socially busy parents who are not very hands-on. Uh, the school did not the school did not have a school counselor at that time present, in fact, on that particular day, and I think a whole week before that. And what happened is that eventually uh, she did not know who to turn to. So she actually started going online. And this is the scary part, right? I mean, not just from this case, I've known this for actually a couple of years. There are actual chat rooms, WhatsApp groups, uh, video groups and sessions, and Facebook groups and Instagram groups for a certain group of close teenagers who actually propagate self-harm. They actually get together and express that when you're going through emotional pain and psychological pain, the way to cut yourself, how to cut yourself, which blades to use, or which body parts to choose on where you want to cut so that others will not know, or how to sterilize the wound and how to recut again, and how that the physical pain numbs the emotional pain and brings down the kind of sense of hurt that is from within. And it somewhere becomes like a group therapy session there for a whole lot of disturbed kids. This child was in a WhatsApp group with 215 other teenagers from across the world, right? So that's what I want to bring forth. It's not about the self-harm, which we all know about, but it's the disturbing part about unhealthy coping mechanisms and how children turn to these unhealthy coping mechanisms when there is a lack of perhaps the right professional assistance or being hands-on as parents or school stakeholders, right? So all of us in education need to understand that we are part of a larger spectrum, of a larger picture of things, right? The need is high. because the incidence of bullying is going up every single month. And it's not just physical or verbal or emotional bullying. There's a lot of cyber bullying and sexual harassment that's happening amongst school children in classrooms. There are more teenagers, like I said, resolving to unhealthy coping mechanisms, like I just mentioned with this, ninth standard student in class. There is so much of more discrimination and marginalization based on your background, based on religion, based on socio-economical status. Uh, Kids are being sidelined and treated horribly and nastily because they may not have a branded school bag, or because of their skin color perhaps, or because of their sexual preference. And all these things lead to lots of deep psychological scars in students in classrooms and in schools. But no one is bringing these topics up. Also, there's such a high, if you read the WHO statistics as of today, there is one suicide attempt by children and teenagers every 3 seconds, and one death by suicide every 40 seconds. And these are alarmingly high stats, but these are WHO statistics, right? Now, when you look at that, and many people feel that, oh, mental health is all about suicide, depression, and anxiety, but it's not. It's a continuum from wellness to illness. But all that I mentioned in between also is part and parcel of mental health in children, right? Also, we are seeing so many students today who are experimenting with drugs. I mean, Bombay is fraught. I mean, again, like I talked about, every second or third teenager I know who is experimenting or using or abusing marijuana and other such drugs. I think every kid, by the time grade 11 comes, they've experimented or are again abusing cigarettes, alcohol, or other harder substances. So many impulsive behaviors, right? Risky behaviors, experimental in nature, driving without a license, trying to sneak out their parents' car without knowing. Parents are clueless what the kids are doing. There's so much of more earlier sexual experiences kids are going through. I mean, they're barely, psychologically and physiologically mature, and yet they engage in high-risk sexual behaviors. There's so much of more online presence, like I said, and experimentation in so many other ways. And lastly, I mean, we had a seminar sometime back where a teenager spoke to us in a webinar, and it was so interesting to hear his perspective. He himself said that I love my parents, I am very close to them, but they haven't brought me up. The internet has. And, just it spoke volumes of this generation literally being brought up on online presence and banking on the internet. Like recently also I had a kid who was going through obsessive compulsive disorder with a lot of ruminating thoughts, which was psychologically and emotionally disturbing him. By the time he consulted me, he already knew that he had OCD. He had researched all the signs and symptoms on the internet. And in fact, he actually made a small little PowerPoint presentation for me to show me that he had, what are the signs of obsessions and what are the signs of compulsions that he had. And he even knew that he perhaps needed to start on medication. So that's how enlightened some kids are. But the sad part is so many more broken homes, so many more parents who are not hands-on. There is such a dearth of basic conversations and communications amongst parents. And it is sad to see this generation then being brought up, like this boy said, on the internet. And if not that, then you have the other breed of parents, and I call this breed of parents the snow plowing parents, or snow plowing parenting, right? I mean, I'm sure you've heard this term before, but it's when parents try and take away all obstacles away from their child's life. So whether it's a problem, whether the child is being called, the parents are being called to school for some naughty behaviors, or whether he's bullied someone else, or whether he's caught cheating, whatever the issue is, kid is not submitting work, his project is not ready. What do these parents do? They have everything ready and they try and remove obstacles from their child's life. This is very dangerous and very scary for a child's emotional well-being, because how does one face the normal stressors then of life. And if you look at all our lives, right, I mean, all of us have ups and downs. All of us have gone through struggles, hurdles, and things not working out like the way we want them to. And if we don't know how to healthily cope during these times, then you have trouble definitely in the mental health space, right? So coming back to all these issues that are there in classrooms, in schools, what are we doing and why is it that the incidence is going higher and higher, and why is it that children aren't reaching out, right? Now the reason why is, to start with, very few schools uh, even give a priority or an importance to mental health. And we look at it very differently, which I will talk to you at the end of this talk. Uh, how many children who are in psychological pain, or this girl, for example, who was going through all this, like I said, she rather went onto these chat rooms and not speaking to her own school counselor or her parents, right? So very few kids, because of the stigma that shrouds mental health, there are so many barriers that don't allow children to seek the right help. Reason being is, like I said, there is stigma. Many kids and even many parents feel, oh, this is a phase, this will pass. Please understand, it's like saying I have a cavity that's increasing in size and the pain and my jaw is swelling, but oh, don't worry, let's put ice, let's use paracetamol for a couple of days, and let's not go to the dentist. It's the same thing. Like, I mean, there is such a stigma that doesn't allow even parents and educated people to seek the right timely help when there is a mental health concern. A lot of children feel that, oh, I'm not crazy, I'm not psycho. They love using the word psycho for mental health concerns, and I don't need to go to a shrink or a psychiatrist or a psychologist if I have a problem. There is a lot of bullying passively that happens. So many kids who really actually do go to a counselor are also teased, so they don't like being seen going to a counselor or a counseling room. And also at the same time, children don't even know what they're going through. So for example, if a kid is actually going through panic attacks or anxiety or depressive thoughts, a child does not know what it is. Because who has taught children what does depression look like? What does anxiety feel like? What are the symptoms of various mental health concerns? Or how does stress manifest? How does stress affect health? How does stress affect your functioning in school? How does a child uh, feel and behave when he has ADHD or attention deficit disorder or a learning disorder or has dyslexia, for example? No one's talking to our kids about these things, right? So there is no awareness, therefore there is no knowledge, and therefore when they are going through distress themselves, they may not even know that they need to seek the right kind of help because they're going through these things, right? And another scary kind of an alarming fact is that the average delay between the onset of mental health symptoms and timely intervention is 8 to 10 years. Imagine, 8 to 10 years. So this itself, and the onset of most mental health concerns or disorders are between the ages of 11 and 18 years in children. So now imagine, these are when it's meant to manifest at this young age, and imagine how many years hence do they sometimes, if not receive the timely intervention. And I truly believe, like in any medical concern also, the earlier you're aware of something, so early awareness, early identification leads to timely intervention and therefore far better treatment outcomes. It's the same with cancer, it's the same with diabetes, it's the same with mental health. So the earlier the child also is aware of certain aspects with himself or herself and reaches the right levels of help, then you'll have far better treatment outcomes, right? Thus bringing, so we've got together as a team, we've always realized that these problems are there, mental health concerns are increasing and on the rise, schools are aware, parents are aware, but what are we doing about it? And I think the only way, and I've been asked this multiple times on multiple forums, how do we get all these stakeholders together under one roof, so to speak, right? So there is a solution for it. And that's exactly why myself and Achal are here to discuss how we feel the importance of not just safeguarding the emotional needs and the psychological needs of our children, but to keep classrooms emotionally safe. We need to bring the psychologists and the school counselors into the classroom. Into the classroom. It is okay to have one less history class or math class or science class, but make at least once a week in the timetable, incorporated into the curriculum, a class devoted to mental health. And what we have done is we've devised and researched over 6 years and pilot run this program called Minds Matter into the school's curriculum. And it's worked wonderfully, right? So one is integrating a mental health curriculum into schools, getting the school counselor out from her office and getting her into the classroom so that she's actually hands-on. It's like a hands-on teacher experientially teaching a subject. You're talking about mental health. You're normalizing language and vocabulary around mental health itself. You're destigmatizing myths about mental health. You're taking away the bias and the shame in seeking help. And most importantly, it is leading, when you do this, it will lead to more what we call as pro-social behaviors, right? So more help-seeking behaviors, other kids recognizing what the problems are, reaching out to the right people of either going to school authorities, parents, or professionals when there is a problem area that needs help. But most importantly is to not just work on a disorder when it comes, but to focus a lot on a change in the mindset. And that is what is important. I think there is generation and generations of conditioning that our brains go through, and the same is back to the next generation that we impart to our kids. They need their own voice, they need their own mindset, they need to have far more better skills. We need to educate their hearts. We need to have kids who are far more compassionate, far more empathic, far more accepting. So that I just talked about accepting and adaptability to this situation, right? And not just for COVID-19, but the adaptability and acceptance to all situations in life that life throws at us, right? This will only lead to better respect of self, respect of others, increase the emotional intelligence, which is such a key important role in a child's life. And lastly, resilience, right? Every child needs to know how to build up that inner strength that will take them through whatever life throws at them, right? So that's what I had to say. And before, I'd love to introduce you to Achal, who's the head and the pastoral head at the Aditya Birla World Academy School, who will, we both would love to share with you what we've created as a solution for this. It's called Minds Matter. But before I stop talking, which I love doing, I just want to give you 7 strategies, because I know most of you either head or run schools or are teachers of schools, but how does a teacher, if nothing else, ensure that the class is emotionally safe, right? So I've just come up with 7 clean points to take away. One is a mindful approach, mindfulness in the choice of words, the tone that you use in the classroom, the body language that you manifest with, whether it's eye contact, your levels of patience, which you really, really need when you're standing there in front of a big class of boisterous kids. But mindfulness in knowing and giving individualized care. It's not just a classroom of 20, 30 kids. There are individual kids over there with different feelings, different emotions, different sets of personalities, and therefore different way of handling. And if you've cracked that, and if you mindfully approached every kid as an individual with his set of strengths and weaknesses, you've won over the class, right? Second, compassion and empathy. I mean, if a kid has had a bad meltdown in class and has flung the chair away or has back answered you and is not responding to you, he might have a problem. He may have underlying undiagnosed ADHD. He might have had a terrible fight that he's witnessed at home between his parents, or he may have been abused himself and then come to school and acting out with these behaviors. For all you know, this kid may be even sexually abused, right? We don't know. What we are seeing is the tip of the iceberg. But if you have that patience and compassion and empathy to put yourself in the child's shoes to perhaps understand where this is coming from, it is very, very important. And that's coming to the third important point of connecting the idea that emotions drive behaviors. Emotions drive behaviors, right? Fourth important point, validation and the power of praise that drives motivation and positivity. Every kid needs that. I mean, if we look back in our school days, at least I remember I perhaps chose medical school and science because of one teacher, my bio teacher. She was such a powerful influence. She made so much of my little artwork in that, we had these bio journals and I used to love art and drawing. And of course, in those days, my parents said, no, you can't be an artist. You can't take art as a stream, even though I wish I did, because I was very creative. But the same teacher brought out the love of science in me and praised me for the stupidest of things that I did. And that's what encouraged me to take up science at least. And then perhaps then the journey and the path was taken, right? So as I said, you have no idea the power that you have in reaching out to those small little minds in your class. Fifth point, individualization, like I said, so important when you have, like say a kid's been badly behaved in your class. After class, spend 2 minutes with him privately, not embarrassing him or pulling him up in front of others, and having a 2-minute or a 1-minute conversation with him. He will respect you tenfold over, right? And if you know that there's been some struggle, some issue at home, some problems in class itself, say a kid's being bullied, or suddenly you're seeing that the kid has lost his friend sitting alone in class, check in. Doing small check-ins with a child can go a long, long way in that rapport building. Sixth, encourage creativity and communication so that it allows self-expression. I know it's tough online to do with all our Zoom calls and our Google classrooms, but carve away 5-10 minutes to have conversations. So much can come out of conversations and communication. And last, 7th point, before you step into that class or whilst you're in class and when you've left that class, always reflect and introspect. You may not have been okay that day for whatever reason, but it cannot come out in the classroom or with the kids. We all wear what we call as a professional mask. We all have to introspect even our bias. I mean, we all have our favorite kids, right? But are we actually manifesting with it? Are we actually expressing it and showing it? And you don't even realize, even parents don't realize, even when we have 2 kids, like I have 2 kids, of course, I love both equally. But one sometimes feel that we always love the other more. It can be the tone of voice. It can be sometimes the way we even look at kids. I mean, the kid has behaved badly and we're smiling sometimes because maybe we find it adorable or cute or whatever it is. But all this requires mindfulness. And if you follow these 7 points, I promise you, it makes a big difference in a child's life. And I think I'm going to stop talking now and let Achal take over to give you a small briefing on this beautiful curriculum that we've created called Minds Matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Marker. Just taking it forward, the Minds Matter was basically something that we feel will strongly work to create mentally healthy classrooms. It's a curriculum which has been designed based on the intervention model, which has been proposed by the World Health Organization. It's primarily a top-down approach where we are talking about promoting psychosocial competence in our learners, working towards a mental health education, which is also very unique to our program. And then we move on to a lot of psychosocial interventions where we're primarily talking about creating a culture within the school which promotes well-being for students, where we are looking at involving the different stakeholders, right from the teachers, parents, principals, all of them. And then, of course, there is the professional treatment, which I think something is that a lot of schools attend to. That's a lot of individual sessions probably for the children, or if the children have learning needs, then the remedial sessions, or so on and so forth. So what we have been doing, or what is happening in most of our schools, are probably the professional treatment and somewhere the psychosocial intervention. But through this curriculum, we'd like to work towards broadening our scope of doing things, including mental health education, bringing it into the classrooms, and definitely promoting psychosocial competence. So that's primarily the rationale or the whole idea of developing a curriculum called the Minds Matter. Also, to take this forward, of course, the core elements which we have here, which are the fundamental, which have a fundamental and a behavioral component. And Dr. Marker already spoke about, even as a teacher, how empathy and compassion go a long way into the classroom, how introspection and reflection is extremely important, how tolerance and respect for different kind of learners is something you need to have. Very similarly, we strongly believe that these are very essential qualities that our learners also need to imbibe. I'm sure through a lot of the interventions that you do at school, some of these values are things that we look at. But when we look at a whole curriculum, where we look when we have the counselor walk into a Minds Matter class, these are all the things that she kind of touches upon every weekly, and we reinforce the whole idea of developing resilience, of building on interpersonal skills, intrapersonal skills, becoming more open to acceptance. And I think that is something we have also seen during the COVID times, where all our learners, as well as us, have accepted and adopted very beautifully. There are some who are still struggling with the whole idea of acceptance and adapting to the new learnings. And that's where the whole motivation to continue to keep doing, the whole idea of resilience, where we are making our learners resilient and being like, yeah, we are in it together and all of this is going to pass. So through all the conversations that we have with these learners, we are kind of playing around with all of these core elements, which we think are very important. And while the counselor may be able to do this through the Minds Matter curriculum, even as a teacher, when you're walking into a classroom, all of these elements can be brought about very beautifully. How Dr. Marker spoke about the 7 skills that will help you create a mentally healthy classroom. The whole idea can be interwoven very beautifully with these elements, right? So moving on, the curriculum that we designed primarily talks about 4 very essential quadrants, which we feel have would overly impact the well-being of the students. And you know how mental health is something that was always about the illness part, having a disability or having a disorder. Whereas we'd like to move the focus to the wellness part. And positive psychology is all about mental well-being. So that is the most important quadrant that we have as a part of the curriculum. And we would like our learners to most definitely incorporate this into their lifestyle, right? So a lot in the module on positive psychology, we're focusing on building skills, understanding your own strengths, working towards strengthening your strengths, and also working towards your weaknesses, becoming more self-aware about yourself, are some of the things that we look at. We also have a module on social emotional learning. We all know that social emotional learning is about self-management, self-awareness, social awareness, respectable decision-making, and all of this is what encompasses the SEL module. And when we look at SEL module, we largely focus on managing one's emotions, managing one's thoughts, as well as managing one's behavior. So these are some of the things that we feel are very important to have conversation about, because we all tell our students that, you know, it's okay, it's just a phase and it will pass. But how do we talk to them about how to actually manage that feeling? How do you what are those thoughts which are unhelpful, and how do you identify those unhelpful thoughts, and then how do you kind of reframe them into more effective positive thoughts? And these are the kind of things that we kind of take into the classroom with our learners. And then, of course, we are social beings, and it's very important that we build on connections, we work on our relationship skills, and therefore we have this next module, which primarily focuses on social psychology, right? Where we are looking at the whole concept of compliance, the whole concept of obedience, the whole concept of pro-social skills, where we are talking about how can I contribute towards a larger environment? What role do I play in this world? And how can I make my influence more positive among the people around me? So that is also something that we talk about. We empower the learners to kind of understand their own strengths, build on it, and then also support people around them through these skill sets. Lastly, the most important module that we have is the one on mental health literacy. Mental health literacy is something that we feel is very important. Yet again, because we are, like Dr. Marker mentioned at the beginning, that how do our learners actually know what is anxiety? Is it just the palpitations that we feel? Are those ruminating thoughts that we have? Is there a way to kind of reframe them? Is there a way to work around them? And when we have things like an ADHD, if my friend has ADHD, what are the real challenges that my friend is facing in the classroom? And how can I, as a peer, support that, right? So even getting our learners to become aware of that. A lot of people around us now have depression, have OCD, have suicidal ideation. How do I identify that? Because if I were to lose my friend because I could not pick up the warning signs, that also impacts my own well-being and the way I look at the world. So it's very important that we make these conversations with our learners, we normalize mental health concerns, and we kind of let them become aware of the warning signs and symptoms. And of course, we largely feel that it is the role of the counselor, which will make all of this very, very easy and very, very important. It is the counselor who is professionally trained to be able to have these conversations in the classroom, who will be able to create an environment even when they are working with the teachers. The teachers will also be picking up these signs when you're interacting with the students in various settings. And you can always come back to her and kind of tell her, you know, this is what I heard from the student. Do you think it's something that needs to be further picked up on? Do we need to build on it anymore? So this whole curriculum primarily talks about all of these things. So also to give you like a little more briefer into the little more details that we have, all our modules are designed even very experientially. So when Dr. Marker spoke about how it's important to be very mindful, I think that's a skill that we feel all the learners of today need to develop. It's a very important self-help skill. It's a very important skill that allows us to maximize our capabilities as well, right? Also, when we bring in the whole conversation of managing, of the ability to be able to manage your own thoughts, your own feelings, and also having research-based strategies to actually do this, kind of allows you to feel empowered. And if we can have the youth of today feel empowered about managing their mental health, then we will definitely have a long way to go in making this fruitful for the future generations, right? Also, we talk a lot about social influences because, you know, like we spoke about how the learners or the students today feel that they don't only learn from their teachers and their parents, but they learn a lot through social media, they learn a lot through social platforms, and therefore helping them decide which of these influences are the ones that they need to keep, and which are the ones that they kind of can eradicate or let go of, also becomes very important. In general, very few schools have spaces where learners can discuss what these influences are and how they need to channelize them. So even when we spoke about having these support groups online, so when you go into the classroom and you talk about this with the learners, there will be one who stands and say, yes, I've heard about it too. And that's when you will be able to make that conversation with them and tell them how there is information all out there, but there is only this much that will work for us, and this much and this part of it which we need to let go of because it's probably unhealthy. But if there is no space to have this conversation, we'll never know what's going on in their mind. We'll never really understand the various things that influences them. So it's very important that these conversations are done within the classrooms. And then, of course, moving on to the mental health literacy module, where we're also going to be talking a lot about building tolerance. And that because we are moving towards a globalized world where we want to adapt best practices from all over the globe. Therefore, building tolerance towards religion, towards culture, towards age, ethnicity, even towards sexuality is something that needs to be spoken to. We need to have platforms where our learners can have these kind of conversations. So like I said, and so to put it all together, this curriculum would allow all of us to create a very healthy classrooms where we have all kind of honest, open discussions and interactions with the learners, and kind of help them channelize to pick up only those influences which are something that they want to keep, and that is what would really help shape their identities. So that's primarily talking a lot about how this whole thing was designed and it has worked. Also, just moving on a little, because we have incorporated this curriculum at the Aditya Birla World Academy and at the Aditya Birla Integrated School for a few years now, we have seen a lot of wonderful outcomes by our learners. And something as simple as bullying, that is something that we struggle with so strongly in schools. We have seen a reduced incidences of bullying. We've seen children actually standing up when they look at bullying and stopping it, which is something that we would want the learners of today to understand and be able to deal with. Bullying is something that even goes on in our adult life. We have bullying at workplace, which is such a major issue of stress for people. Right, so helping them eradicate that, helping them identify that, and building a peer network of support is something that we've been able to do through having these conversations and having this curriculum. We've also been able to have a lot more empathy and tolerance towards the LGBTQI community by our learners. There has been a lot of interest in mental health and psychological interventions. We've also seen I think one of the instances that I would like to share is when one of our students had a panic attack in the classroom because she was asked to make a presentation suddenly and she was not feeling really good. How her peers turned around and supported her, because they understood that this is a panic attack. They understood we had spoken about breathing strategies. We had spoken about what to say when this happens, how to support the person. And because we've had these conversations with the learners, they were able to help her de-stress. They were able to help her manage that situation and then move on to doing whatever she had to do. So a lot of these things we've been able to create an environment and a culture which has worked wonderfully for our learners as well. So I think, Dr. Marker, would you like to add anything here in terms of the effectiveness?
Yeah, thank you so much, Achal. So actually that kind of brings us to an end with our talk. So like I said, to end, our hope and endeavor apart from this curriculum is to, like I said, it's to make schools, it's to make classrooms emotionally safe, psychologically and emotionally, children need to be more aware of what mental health is. Like I said, mental health is not just about depression and suicide. And sometimes, social media also glorifies wrongdoings. Or like I gave an example of the case that I brought up with self-harm. Sometimes reporting is not healthy, right? I mean, we're constantly in talks with newspapers, etc., to how to even report suicide, right? So giving the right vocabulary, using the right terminology, normalizing concepts. We would be so happy if, for example, if a kid comes up and shares, right, that he's feeling suicidal, and it's okay to ask a kid that are you getting thoughts, or do you feel like harming or hurting yourself? It would be great if a teenager can walk into a classroom and open up with his best friends or with a teacher or with a counselor and open up about his sexual preference. It'll be superb to know that a child can walk into any space and share that his parents are going through a divorce. Divorce is not some bad word or something to be ashamed about. Uh, and so on and so forth, right? So it's just to bring about more humaneness, kindness, compassion. And like I said, at the end of it all, we all hope and pray that our kids turn out to be good human beings. And I think that's the eventual focus, right? I mean, of course, intellect, studies, marks, uh, success. But I think all of that is nothing without being a good human being. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Marker. Thank you, Achal. I think the last 50 minutes have been really, really enlightening and eye-opening for most of us here today. We have a viewer from Facebook who has a question for Dr. Marker. She says that right now we have a new intake of children who have come in. We are dealing with a new grade. How can we talk to these children who are a new class and we haven't even met them face to face? It's all happening virtually. Do you have any tips for her?
Interesting question. I think that's with all our teachers, right? Because we've suddenly gone online onto a Google Classroom or a Zoom class, and we're suddenly seeing 20, sometimes 30, sometimes 40 new faces. So there's a lot of icebreakers and small activities that you can do to help and engage. Like, to be honest, from what I'm seeing with our school and what our school teachers are doing and what even my babies are going through is simple thing like letter writing amongst kids, sharing it with them, starting off the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes, just interacting. So even if they're smaller kids, asking them what they're doing on the lockdown. So I remember my 9-year-old was asked to show anything that he or she has done creatively in the last week or on a weekend. So they all come and show their artwork, or they show their craft work, or they just have open just conversations, right? So it's all about being creative. You can create anything, and you can actually do a lot of wondrous things online. Even I'm tech averse sometimes, and I have blocks against technology, and I was even so against doing online counseling, right? And I was like, oh my God, I hate this. But to be honest, like I said in the beginning, we all have to adapt, and the faster we adapt and accept the change, we can make the best of it. The feeling has to be that I want to do it, I don't have to do it. And if you change that dichotomy in your mind, I think you can make anything super fun, even online.
Okay, thank you. We have another question here. Can sharing details of mental health issues give ideas to kids where there are none?
I couldn't hear that, sorry. Achal?
Dr. Marker, the question is, can sharing details about mental health concerns give ideas to kids when there are none?
Okay, that's a...
sorry. Can sharing details...
I got it.
That's done. Yeah.
So that's a very, very important question. In fact, it's a question I put forth, so to give you one example about this, years and years back, even when we were being trained, we were kind of told that if you feel that a child or an adult or whoever you're counseling, if they have ideas to say harm themselves or hurt themselves, or someone is very, very low and depressed, and if you're going to talk about suicide or self-harm, does that put ideas in a child's mind, or does that put ideas or thoughts negatively even in our client's mind? The answer and research shows no. In fact, when we got trained in the youth mental health first aid, which was giving first aid to people who are emotionally disturbed or distraught, the question and the training was, the minute you get that feeling that something's not okay and you feel someone is really, really low and perhaps depressed clinically and is getting suicidal thoughts, you have to ask. By asking directly that, are you getting thoughts about taking your life or harming yourself? They say by even simple questions like that, but which are very direct, you're not putting any negative or wrong thoughts in that person's mind, but that promotes help-seeking behaviors. It helps a child open up more. And like I said, it can perhaps even save a life. So no, you have to ask things directly. And the more you normalize mental health concerns, it is so important. Like, for example, if I was getting a panic attack and I didn't know what was happening to me, or I had never heard the term anxiety before or panic attacks before, and that's a study that shows that 90% of even adults who go through their first panic attack, they go straight to the ICU because they think they're having a heart attack, because the symptoms mimic cardiac symptoms, right? But if there is more awareness and knowledge on understanding how a panic attack or an anxiety attack manifests and how it feels, there is at least calmness in the mind to know that you're going through or perhaps experiencing something like that and not a cardiac condition. So we are living in an age of technology where I think we've frozen on the questions.
One more question, Dr. Marker. Some tips for maintaining good mental health in the virtual classrooms.
Okay, so mental health during virtual classrooms, I think it is so important to take breaks. I think because we're all working from home and doing a lot of screen time ourselves, we have to understand, at least I've experienced that when I'm seeing 7 or 8 clients and cases back to back in real time, I don't get as tired and fatigued as I do when I'm doing online sessions, right? So you have to understand the brain receives information quite differently with audiovisual stimulation and the light and the sound. It's like even gaming, right? So gaming can get addictive, social media browsing can get addictive, and online and just being online all the time can get extremely tiring for the brain, the mind, and even the body. So having the correct work-life balance, choosing a space in your home which is conducive to the work environment without distractions, etc. They say even sometimes changing different spaces and pockets in your home can help to work. Always ensuring the distance of the device, your posture, your neck, your back, your shoulders, the right kind of chair. All these small things make a big difference. Sometimes, we're very prone to getting dry eyes. So you get some amazing eye drops, which are not with medication or steroids, but they help lubricate the eyes. In fact, you get even sterile water that you can put in as eye drops that help with lubrication. Because we are working from home and online, I do a lot of my talk sometimes whilst I'm standing. So you don't have to be seated all the time. So you can switch off your screen and take breaks. But the most important thing is learn when to cut off. And that's something that has to be respected across. Even others or employees or employers or bosses or people we work with and colleagues, we have to respect each one's time. You can't think that, okay, because we are working from home and we have nothing else to do, we are, accessible all the time, and respecting time frames. So if you've kept an appointment for a particular time, please stick to it. But after you're done with your 6 or 8 hours of work, you need to cut off and then go and spend that amazing quality time with your kids and your family, because that's how it would help in a situation like this when there's so much of online presence.
Dr. Marker, I know you just spoke about cutting off at the right time, and it's 6 o'clock right now, but just one last question can we take up? Any tips to boost teachers' motivation? They're going through huge transformation and high expectations.
Yeah, that was a question from Hemant. Yeah. Uh, you know, when we had a seminar sometime back with, all the stalwart principals like Miss Isaacs and Dr. Vakil recently, I think one thing that came out really strongly is how awesome teachers have been. And accolades to them, because the way they have stepped up. So many teachers who've been mortally frightened about technology and all these new virtual classrooms and learning different techniques and innovations even online, it has been very, very challenging. Most of our teachers are females who are, at home, who have other priorities. So many of us have not had house help, and we've had to do the cooking and the cleaning and looking after their own kids' online school, and balancing all of that has been a nightmare. And I know many, many teachers who've gone through a lot of burnouts. All we can say is, it's huge. I mean, the success in education, and we've seen this across schools, right? I mean, parents who are also so skeptical about online schooling have actually welcomed it, because it's kept everyone structured and a timeline going in the house. It's kept everyone intellectually stimulated. In fact, I think parents, even myself, have suddenly realized the worth and the value and the effort and hard work that goes into being a teacher. Because I think all of us have had to somewhere adopt and adapt to a teacher's role. So full on respect for that. But my tips and strategies are the same. So whether you're a teacher working from home or whether you are any professional working from home, you have to maintain that balance and you have to cut off. And as we were discussing before this talk, I was having that short talk with Achal, you have to love what you're doing. If you keep thinking that, oh my God, I have another Zoom call or I have to get up at 7:30 in the morning or whatever, you're going to hate what you're doing. So enjoy it, have fun. And I mean, I love cracking jokes. Some of them are absurd, and I've been told to shut up on that. So, but it's great, right? If you bring jokes into your workspace, if you add humor and fun into what you do, and in our field, right, when you're dealing with kids as a teacher, as a psychologist, as a school counselor, it is very draining. And as you heard, we receive so much of negativity sometimes as teachers from parents, sometimes who are another breed altogether, because parents can be really, really a difficult body of people to deal with. And clients that we help out to seek emotional and psychological help with, right? So we need to cut off and create that balance. But like I said, adding humor has worked for me. And if you do that in your day-to-day life and with your loved ones. And lastly, I think in times like this, gratitude, right? We have jobs, we have a steady income, we are not worried about the basics in life, which so many millions of people don't at this point in time. And I just feel that this has at least taught us one thing, is to be grateful, right? For the stupidest and the smallest of things that we've taken for granted in life, if we constantly, every day, morning and night, think of 5 or 6 or 10 things to feel grateful about, it keeps us going. And that's something we need to instill into our kids as well. So that's a great classroom practice in circle time, or talking to your kids either at home before bedtime, or opening up your classroom by talking about, think of 2 things or 3 things today that you should feel grateful for or about. It's a lovely philosophy to imbibe.
Thank you, Dr. Marker. I can't tell you the power of this conversation that we have had for this 1 hour. We're extremely grateful and in gratitude for what you've told us, the little tips, the thoughts, the case studies that you took us through, and Anchal about the Minds Matter curriculum that you spoke about. So very useful that is. And I think if every school were to take up this program and go through, it will be such a useful, I mean, can't tell you about being useful, but we're going to take care of the generation that is coming forward and the next generations. So I'm grateful to you, Dr. Marker and Anchal, for this conversation and taking forward. To all the participants, thank you for joining in. Take some time out to reflect on whatever Dr. Marker and Anchal spoke about, introspect about your own practices, give it a thought about what they have all said. I'm surely going to give it some thought about what you said during this session. Thank you so much for such a wonderful, powerful session on mental health and awareness. I wish you could go on and we could go on hearing, but of course we have to cut off. Yes, thank you again. Yeah, to all the participants, I've just pasted the feedback form link, and if you could just quickly give us a feedback on the session, it will help us going forward. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Take care.